Welcome all. Welcome to another episode of Expose. Let's kill the echo. Echo. Welcome everyone. Good to see everyone. Hi Ben, Archibus, Sean, Lucifer, Paula. I'm going to do a episode of exposed fake Enneagram theories on tri-types. But because tri-types is not that well known, it has to take its turn or wait till all the other more important Enneagram theories have been destroyed. To beginning today with the combination of MBTI and the Enneagram, it makes no sense to me to do the MBTI and the Enneagram at all. Nevertheless, especially on Reddit, I am quite interested. I love Reddit. There's a very active Enneagram group or subreddit, as it's called on Reddit. Thank you, Ben. Yes, after months and months and months, I finally got time to go to the hairdresser. I know I've been going to the same hairdresser for more than 20 years. And it's based on the Enneagram. At that time when I met her, I did the Enneagram. I was single. I discovered she had a type 1 perfectionist brain. I did not want to have a relationship with a type 1 perfectionist at all. And then I learned that she was a hairdresser, and then she is the only hairdresser allowed to touch my hair. Because she's so perfectionistic, she's almost literally creating this hair by hair. So the topic for today is MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. There's a question from Lucy. Well, you have been studying Enneagram for over 20 years. Yes, in fact, for 24 years. This is my 24th year. I learned it in 1997. I spent about 2 days in an Enneagram training that I did not choose. My boss sent me there when I was working for a company. I had been promoted to because I behaved very badly. And my background is an academic philosopher, so I thought, no way, it's impossible that we can have at that time 6 billion, nowadays 7 billion people on the planet, and that there would be only 9 personality types. It would be complete ludicrous in my mind. And especially not only that it would be 9 personality types for those 6 billion people, or nowadays 7 billion people, but that nobody except for the Enneagram people would know about it. There being 9 types would make no sense for my philosophical mind, and nobody else knowing about it made even less sense. Unfortunately, or fortunately, because that's how I got interested in the Enneagram, is at the end of the whole course, we were doing panels, and I was sitting on a panel for type 3 successful workers, my type, and there were colleagues sitting next to me that I completely disrespected. I had no respect for them whatsoever. And at the time, I did not do neuro-linguistic programming, so I just thought they were very stupid. Nowadays, I know they were not stupid. They only acted stupid. Small difference. But I had no respect for them whatsoever. And that day, I actually learned to respect them. Because what happened was that the audience were asking us questions, and the guy sitting next to me, who I thought was a complete loser, gave the answer, and a very specific answer that was inside my head. And so that means that there were only 2 options. Either this guy was a great mind reader and he could read my mind, or the Enneagram was way more valuable than I thought at the start of the course. And that persuaded me to study the subject in great detail. I was very lucky that a couple of years later, we were creating, by that time, I had my own software company, and we got an assignment to create a game for teenagers where they could experiment online with drugs, hard drugs, soft drugs, gambling, smoking, and drinking. And the idea was that if they, learned all the negative stuff about all those vices online, that they would do less so in reality. Well, there was a university attached to the project, and they researched it, and it did not pan out. But we were asked to take into account personality disorders, and then I found links between personality disorders and the Enneagram, and then that way we used the Enneagram in a big government-sponsored project. So that was also my first book about the Enneagram. And ever since I've been studying it, in 2008, I came to the realization that the Enneagram had too many idiots, self-proclaimed experts going around. So I switched to the neurogram. The neurogram is the Enneagram, but then a neurological version. In 2008, there were the first signs that what we call personality isn't personality at all. They're actually what's nowadays known as evolution. What's nowadays known as evolutionary behavioral patterns. Our brain has been shaped through evolution, and depending on what kind of brain you have, that that makes you act in a certain way. Again, my own brain, I have lots of dopamine-sensitive brain cells, and that means that I score very high on something called extraversion, which is really all about the sensitivity for material rewards, money, and food. And as you can see, I love food. So, but it has to do with my brain. So nowadays we know that what people call personality doesn't exist. It's a psychological construct, which is pointless, stupid concept. But in reality, what we call personality is in reality evolutionary behavioral patterns. Have you sold training to that boss since? No, unfortunately not, but he has also moved on. So if there are no remarks, no questions before we start, then let's dive into it, because we are going to look into MBTI. Why? Because it's often combined with the Enneagram, which is logical to do from the point of view of the Enneagram people, of the MBTI people, as we shall see. I enlarge it a bit, so that's nicely large. So Myers-Briggs and MBTI Enneagram correlations. A whole doctor, it's not just someone, a real doctor is discussing this. And from the perspective of Myers-Briggs, it's very smart to associate yourself with the Enneagram, because as we shall see, is that MBTI has this very specific, very exceptional a place within all these personality typing methodologies, because most of the methodologies, including the Enneagram, have not been tested by science. They have not been researched. But Myers-Briggs Type Indicator has actually been studied for 30 years by the same institute that also does the SAT testing in the US. And for 30 years, they have sent out so-called beta tests, where they said, okay, we sell you the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator test, but we sell it as a beta. We are still researching whether there are correlations between anything that is come up with the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and anything else in your life. And actually, they found out that after 30 years of studying it, and they made lots of money by it, that MBTI is also the most successful personality typing system. It's marketable, so they surfed on the wave. Yes, so they made literally billions each year, and still Myers-Briggs brings in billions each year. So I'm very, very jealous at compared to that. because my neurogram system also brings in cents and dollars, but not billions. It's literally a $1 billion industry, but built on quicksand, because unlike everything else, unlike no, name it, Enneagram or Bellwin or DISC or spiral dynamics, whatever you name, it is that all the other things have never been researched. But Myers-Briggs Type Indicator has been researched for 30 years, because they were making money while we were researching it. So why stop researching it? But after 30 years, they had to admit, okay, in 30 years, we did not find a single correlation with anything, literally with anything. They had the problems that people, if you take the MBTI test within 24 hours again, then quite a number of people get a different score, which is completely ludicrous, because you want to have personality is defined by psychologists as that what is staying the same through longer periods of your life. So if your personality would change within 24 hours, that is a very bad thing. In fact, I have to look it up. I'll look it up while you watch with me. This is my Dutch site. Unfortunately, this is not in English, but I'll translate it to English. Let me see if I can find it very quickly. Oh, I have a link for it. So let me see if I can find it. No, not really, but we can. Here we can see it, because we're actually doing how do you call them, longitude tests of the neurogram model. So with 45 people, for 48 people who have done my neurogram test, we asked them whether they changed their type, and then for 45 people they did not change their type. So this is if you can see the 48, 45, and you can see the 6.5. 6.5 is actually the years, and this is the 6.5 years that people have been tracked on average. So some people have been tracked for 10, 12 years, others for 3 or 4 years, but on average 6.5 years. And then 45 out of 48 people stuck with the same type that we found originally in the neurogram test. So not an Enneagram test, it's a neurogram test. And that is what you want to see when you do personality testing. In fact, even more so through the neurogram, because what I said, it's not really a personality. Personality does not exist. Instead, we have evolutionary behavioral patterns, and these are created by your brain. And given that your brain hardly doesn't change at all during a lifetime, you want to stay within the same evolutionary behavioral patterns within your life. So it's very important that people do not change types throughout their lives. But here we have hard proof that with the neurogram model, they do not change during their lifetime. Because in fact, the 3 people that did change, they actually changed within weeks, or at the max 3 months after doing the test. That the testing procedure went wrong. That's why they got to the wrong type. And they found out themselves within a couple of weeks, at the worst case, within a couple of months. And after that, they stuck with that new type. So even though that is 45 out of 48, which is a fantastic score on any measures, in fact, the 3 people that changed types because we made errors in the original testing. They did not change types because there was something else going on. But it's different testing type. You're comparing professional typing for neurogram versus website test typing for MBTI. No, I'm also comparing it. So the MBTI tests is not website tests. These were the professional tests from these SAT Institute that have been done for 30 years. So I'm going to compare it with stuff on the internet. But the data, the scientific data on MBTI is very hard data based on very professional testing. Yeah, the professional test changed after 24 hours. Yes, indeed. How do we know this? We know this because there's a fantastic book called The Personality Disorder. That is ludicrous. Yes, it is. So there's a book, The Personality Brokers, The Strange History of Myers-Briggs and the Birth of Personality Testing by Dr. Merv Emery. She is an associate professor at Oxford University, and she has dug up the whole history of MBTI. Here she is. Because MBTI still, because there's still an MBTI Institute and there's still literally billions each year coming in, it is very hard to find the actual scientific data. It has all been suppressed. But fortunately, Dr. Merv Emery has made a very long study, which has been published in the book, The Personality Brokers. And it's a great book. If you have any interest in personality typing, then reading The Personality Brokers, it's just a fantastic story. Also because it's the history of the two women that developed the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, but also for the whole history of personality typing. It's just a fantastic book, but it's also disclosing or exposing the failures of MBTI, including within 24 hours changing of test results. So without further ado, let's go to the Myers-Briggs in combination with MBTI Enneagram correlations. Well, this doctor is using the word correlations, but I don't think he knows what the word correlation means, because there's no scientific correlation. In fact, he's very careful in avoiding any words that suggest that this is science. For those people who know, I'm also a master trainer in neuro-linguistic programming. I am very aware of how words can program your mind to make assumptions that are not there. And you can see that they try to have this scientific atmosphere, but they carefully avoid saying that it is scientific. Unlike others, for instance, we have in the Netherlands, we have Dutch, especially in the professional football world, soccer for you Americans. There's something called action type. Action type is based on MBTI, and action type claims to be scientific, but of course it's based on MBTI, so it's completely unscientific. And that actually makes action types, that turns action types into pseudoscience. But here they're very careful. But they claim correlations, and we can, thanks to Dr. A.J. Drent, we can immediately prove that MBTI is worthless. But again, this is what the first point that I'm trying to make. Given that MBTI is so worthless, it is a very good strategy for people who want to sell MBTI to associate MBTI with the Enneagram. I don't think that the Enneagram is perfect, especially because there are too many idiots who proclaim themselves to be experts on the Enneagram and who come up with all idiotic theories. That's why we have the Expose Fake Enneagram Theory series. Nevertheless, you're much better, much closer to what is really going on when you use the Enneagram than when you use MBTI. So for MBTI people, it's very smart to move to the Enneagram. But for the Enneagram, if you move or include or associate yourself with the MBTI, that's a very stupid move. And we can prove it thanks to Dr. A.J. Drent, because fortunately, if people sell bullshit, they often don't think it through. So he actually published a proof that it's all nonsense. Let's skip everything. I'll come back to it later. But we're actually... oh, here it is. Here it is, Myers-Briggs and Enneagram types. So we have, for the people, if you don't know Myers-Briggs, you have 4 axes, and the first axis between introverts and extroverts. And you have, that is basically how people take introversion, extroversion on their face value, or I say that, or in the popular sense. We'll see that in reality it's completely different. I already gave away that my brain scores high on extraversion, but that has to do with sensitivity to material rewards. So sensor intuitives, if you have some, that's the other axis. I'm not going to try to explain it. Thinkers and feelers, that's an axis, and judgers and perceivers. And so you can have any combination of the first letter of these 4 words. at least as long as you only take one of each axis. And then you get 16 different types made up by 16 different combinations of these 4 axes. But here we have an immediately proof that the whole system is completely bullshit. Because if you count how many types there are with introverts and extroverts, you can count and you can see that there are only 7 types. Even worse with sensor and intuitives. Now we have only 3 types. With thinkers and feelers we have 6 types, and with judges and perceivers we have 4 types. And this is the proof that it's complete bullshit. Because according to Myers-Briggs Type Indicator theory, every person has a Myers-Briggs Enneagram type. A Myers-Briggs type, an MBTI type. Every person, every single person on Earth has a type as this. So that means that for every person, you're either an introvert or an extrovert. Again, this is also what is wrong with it, but the theory, because it's just too stupid to think that you can only have such a binary choice. But it means everyone should either have an introvert, an I, or an E for extrovert. But hey, wait a minute, we only have 7 types. What's up with the other 2 types? So here they suggest that because everyone also has an Enneagram type, in reality, for each of these axes, you should have a indicator for all 9 types. If you, for instance, with introverts and extroverts have only 7 types and skip 2 types, this literally means that there is a whole bunch of people, again, let's say that each type has about 10% of the population. Then we're talking about, when you miss 2 types, we talk about 1.5 billion people who suddenly fall off the introvert-extrovert scale, according to this theory. Well, that's nuts. And so here, the Myers-Briggs people are contradicting Myers-Briggs Type Indicator theory. It becomes even worse for sensor and intuitive, because now we're missing 6 types. So 6 types, that would be, now if I calculate, there are no mediators, no type 9s. Most people have a type 9 mediator brain. So let's say that's about 70% of the population. So that would be like almost 5 billion people, according to this theory, have no choice on sensor or intuitives. So I hope you get my drift. If you're unable to link every single type to one of these axes, i.e., SI, TF, JP, then you have basically disproven the whole system. It can only work if you have a distinction for each of the 9 types. And of course, this doctor in MBTI cannot make this. They cannot, assign for all 9 types all these letters. Because there is no correlation between MBTI and the Enneagram, which is obvious given that there is no correlation with anything with MBTI. There is simply no information in MBTI whatsoever. It is a completely random noise. But you can see here, that is the reason why he only comes up with this. No, it's not even half a model. It's like a quarter of a model. And this is the absolute proof that Myers-Briggs Type Indicator is nonsense, and it is useless to combine it with the Enneagram types. Even worse, if you were to try to actually say, okay, Joost, we're going to, this is indeed a big mistake. We're going to repair this mistake, this error. We're going to assign the 9 types. Then, of course, you get into the other trouble that then it becomes no longer distinguishing. So the trouble is that if you do typing, you want to make sure that the types do actually distinguish between different persons. What about correlation with MBTI's cognitive functions rather than the dichotomy letters? You have to help me with MBTI cognitive functions. Let me check, because I'm not an MBTI person. Let's see if I can quickly find what's it about. I do have a very quick website. Except. Let's go through it. Well, it is okay. So first of all, a like correlation between Enneagram Type 2 and extroverted feeling. Well, we'll get into it when we go into all the details, but I fear that the whole MBTI labels are also senseless. So it could be that it is the case, but we don't know what it actually we're saying. But let me quickly study it on the fly to see what we're going to learn. But I now learned that the cognitive functions come from Carl Jung. Of course, I did not say that, but Carl Jung has come up with 3 out of the 4 MBTI axis, and the last axis, perceiving and judging, has been added by Myers-Briggs, 2 women who created the test based on nothing. So I just added a 4th one. So, but Carl Jung is a Freudian psychotherapist who has been, scientifically been repudiated. Nobody on university studies Freud or Jung anymore. And Jung yes, so here there's more detail why it is so. Their extroverted sensing is taste, touch, smell, sound. That side that sounds like basically each MBTI has a precise cognitive function stack. Yeah, that sounds nice, but I have no clue what it is, what that means. So I'm trying to figure out. And that's the good thing of combining it with neurolinguistic programming, because then we try to actually discover, if you say something like that, how do we translate it to the 5 senses? What do I feel, hear, see, taste, smell when we talk about precise cognitive function stack? It's just too abstract a concept, and that is often that works very good to hypnotize people. So people go, "Wow, a precise cognitive function stack, not just a normal cognitive function stack, but a precise one." So that sounds really nice, but it is very hypnotic. It's a hypnotic language pattern, and people like that kind of talk because it is their brain will fill in the blanks, and you think, "Oh yes, of course, a precise cognitive function stack." But in reality, we then fill in the blanks for each individual completely different. So there is no intersubjective meaning anymore once you start to use these kinds of words, except that there's a nice feeling within the group where the group feels, "Oh, this feels great, so I'm going to agree with it." So what we want to do is to actually translate this to the little nitty details in terms, okay, but what are we experiencing when we are talking about precise cognitive function stack? What are we seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, or tasting? And I think that will be very difficult to do. But let me get back to what I'm seeing here. And so extroverted sensing is using taste, touch, smell, sound, sight. So that sounds like nitty-gritty details. But of course, why call it extroverted? It's just basically sensing. Why would you call it extroverted sensing? Especially in light that we nowadays know that extraversion has much more to do with sensitivity to material rewards. Of course, there is within the brain, there is a very close connection between sensing and rewards. Because if you can't sense your rewards, if you can't sense your material rewards, they're not rewards. So within the brain, you have the dopamine reward system, but the dopamine reward system is also mainly responsible for our senses. So these are really intertwined neurological structures. So extroverted sensing makes sense, but then we go to introverted sensing, and that is understanding the world through past, present, and experience. and that then completely stops making sense. So you can either say, well, these people are, but yeah, so you could say there's something like openness for experience. So openness for experience would be extroverted sensing, and then you have openness for reasoning, which is the opposite of openness for experience, and that would be introverted sensing. But it's no longer sensing. It's not. We call it openness for reasoning for a reason. Let me add the neurogram model so we can see it in close detail. So here you can see the big four: agreeableness, of the big five, four of the big five: agreeableness, conscientiousness, open for experience, extraversion. And so you can say that sensing has to do with openness for experience, and then the opposite axis is open for reasoning, and that would be introverted sensing. But again, that makes very little sense, because then we get a very different, completely different meaning for sensing, a completely different meaning as to how you normally would use the word sense. Because reasoning is the opposite of sensing, and so introverted sensing, if you name that into reasoning, then yeah, weird things happen. I think open for reasoning is more TE, extroverted thinking. Yes, again, that's where I wanted to go. So thank you for making that little jump there. And so, of course, as soon as they are going to introduce thinking, then of course we get much more into reasoning. But now we get the problem that it is to call it extroverted. It makes no longer any sense. Because now we can see that extraversion is on the other side. It has to do with openness for experience, and the opposite is detached, being detached of material rewards. And so, yes, neuroscience basically shows you that there is no extroverted thinking in this term, in the same way that there is no introverted sensing, as we just discussed. So for that reason, you can see that the cognitive functions do not save MBTI whatsoever, in my quick evaluation of it. But we can check, of course. So this was A.G. Trent. We can check to see if it makes sense what they're saying. Enneagram 1 correlations. Primarily judging types. Well, of course, it's easy to come up with Enneagram 1 as correlations as judging, because they are judging. But again, I'm not sure whether it's even the Jungian, or this is judging and perceiving. So this is what Myers-Briggs made up themselves. So it's not even Jung. So I'm not sure whether the judging of here's my problem. So we have a limited set of words that we can use to describe things. And so when we talk about judging, it could very well mean one thing for perfectionist, and a completely different thing for the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. And it's just too simple to think that if both terms use the word judge, that we then have found it. So ones can be found among any of the Myers-Briggs MBTI judging types. Yes, but in reality, given that there's no correlation between MBTI and anything, the perfectionist can be found, ones can be found among any of the 16 types. However, insofar as the Enneagram 1 functions as a moral change agent, well, that's already a bad description of what the type 1 actually does. Feeling, perceiving types may sometimes test as ones as well. Of course they may, because any type can have any Enneagram type, any MBTI type can link to any Enneagram type. Patoon, welcome. I didn't notice that you were here. I think that some neurogram types are more judging than others. Again, yeah, judging, of course, judging is a very particular evolutionary behavioral pattern. But what is the case is that it's actually connected to conscientiousness. And so type 1 perfectionist is very good at protecting long-term goals against short-term impulses. And that is what conscientiousness is about. And so what happens is that that's also the reason why the type 1 perfectionist is not a moral change agent. What is important for type 1 perfectionist is this combination of conscientiousness with social stability. It says stability on top of the scheme, but it is social stability. And what they then do is that they find it very important that they want to protect the long-term goals of the group. So what is important for type 1 perfectionists is that we act in the way we're supposed to act. And often, of course, that sounds morally, because the group will describe its own behaviors or its own goals as morally just. It's very difficult for a group to say, okay, these are our goals, these are our long-term goals, and they're evil as hell, but we'll go for it. Even Make America Great Again, Trump fanatics, they think that they are morally just, even if they attack the Capitol. And so the perfectionist will come across as morally, or as a moral agent, not a change agent. The perfectionist does not want to change it. It wants to create stability. It wants to make sure that everyone within the group abides by the rules as set by the group. But the type 1 perfectionist doesn't do this because he's a moral person himself. He does this because he finds it very important to have social stability in combination with the protection of long-term goals. And that is why he is going to judge others if you are step out of line. If you make mistakes, then he's going to judge you. But it's not a judging in a moral sense. It isn't judging in the sense from, hey, you're not working towards our great goal, and you are disturbing social stability. I'm going to correct you. So this is completely different. So yes, the type 1 perfectionist does this much more than others, but it's not the same as saying that he is a moral change agent. That's basically misunderstanding the type 1 perfectionist. Generally, I've studied Enneagram type 1 are too rigid to be perceiving types in MBTI. Well, that is a good observation. Might have to do that you deal with people who are a bit on the disturbed side or stressed side. Let me add the psychopathologies to the screen. So that's the great thing once you start to use the neurogram, is that you can, because it's based on cybernetic Big Five theory, you get suddenly you get a lot of scientific research that you can use. And you can see that you say what you're saying, that type 1s are too rigid. Well, you can actually see rigidity is, and these are what happens if people do too much of it. So the type 1 perfectionist is quite into social stability, but also into exploitation, running everything as efficient as possible. And again, this has to do also with conscientiousness. If you have a long-term goal and you want to protect it against short-term impulses, that is one of the ways that you work as efficient as possible towards this long-term goal. Now, if you are going to work too efficient, if exploitation becomes too much exploitation, too much efficiency, then it turns into rigidity, and then you have a psychopathology, so as it's called within cybernetic Big Five theory. So here you can actually see that that is very well perceived that type 1s can be too rigid. But again, same goes for 2s and 3s. And yeah, I don't know enough about MBTI to exclude perceiving types. But again, I think that given that there are no correlations, any Enneagram type can connect to any MBTI type. And that's also the reason what makes it completely valueless, because it has zero information in saying in any combination with the Enneagram and MBTI. It may sound nice. People might start to feel good about it because it is a hypnosis. It is basically astrology. It's why people like astrology. It are nice sentences that make you feel good. But there is zero information in those sentences, in the same way that there is zero information in astrology. So, where are we? So let's continue with type 2. So we already saw that type 1, there are not that good a description. Type 2, feelers are typically more empathetic and nurturing than their thinking counterparts. Feelers are far more likely to resonate with the Enneagram 2, also known as the helper. Well, at least they got the name correct. That's already a big thing. Yeah, what can I say? Yes, type 2 helpers are feelers, but actually Enneagram type 3, even though they put all their feelings inside the refrigerator, they are also feeling types. And of course, Enneagram type 4 romantics are also feelers. So I'm not that impressed by it. On top of it, it's actually a dynamic. So the other big thing why MBTI will never ever work with the Enneagram is because the MBTI is a static model. You basically have these 4 letters that define your type, whereas the Enneagram, and this is the wonderful, most fantastic part of the Enneagram, is a dynamic model. It's the only dynamic model of personality typing that I know. And that's also the reason why, for me, the Enneagram is my inspiration for the neurogram. And the neurogram is the neurological version of the Enneagram, based on cybernetic Big Five theory. But what I basically did was take cybernetic Big Five theory and added the dynamics of the Enneagram to it. So if we go back to, and unfortunately, I can only do it in this, because it's the only one that I have where the Enneagram sign is in it. So if I take my brain type 3, and then in times of relaxation, I move towards 6. And when I'm relaxed, when I'm stressed, I move to type 9. This is the stress and relaxation dynamic. There is a second dynamic within the Enneagram, which is the dynamic from your moving from your deadly sin towards your main virtue. That's one that is really unknown within the field of Enneagram, and is also not included in the cybernetic Big Five theory part. But if we go to type 2, so we say, okay, type 2s are helpers. Yes, that's correct, but only when they're in the neutral state, where they're neither stressing nor relaxing. Because if they start to relax, they move towards 4, towards romantics, and they are still feeling. But the moment they move to type 8, then they don't move away from feeling, and actually they move towards anger and activity. Yeah, you can say anger is also a feeling, but it's not the same what is meant with feeling within the Enneagram. So even such an obvious link between feeling and the type 2 helper, you can see that it only works partially, because as soon as you look at the dynamics of the Enneagram, then you actually see that that starts to fall apart. And that is one of the reasons. There are many reasons why it's completely senseless to combine the Enneagram and the MBTI from the perspective of the Enneagram people. Of course, I already said that for the MBTI people, it's a great move, because they move from complete nonsensical bullshit towards something that makes much more sense. But the other way around is a bad thing to do. For one, because MBTI has 0 correlations. For 2, because the Enneagram is a dynamic system of personality typing, and MBTI is a static model for personality. And of course, we live in a dynamic world. Reality is dynamic. So any static description of reality is way less valuable than a dynamic description of reality. So that's another reason to stick with the Enneagram and ditch MBTI. And we're going to move towards type 3, because this is, of course, my type. So now I know even more. And now we can come to, okay, this guy is probably an MBTI guy, and He might know a bit about MBTI, but given that MBTI is completely valueless and complete nonsense, he knows a lot about noise, which is pointless. But now I start to sincerely doubt if he knows much about the Enneagram. Because here he writes, the essence of the Enneagram 3 is characteristically masculine. What? No, that's a complete mistake. The Enneagram is one of the big reasons to, even though the Enneagram itself is that each type is completely different from other types, and we actually want to make sure that the divide between people, the divide between different types becomes larger, and that people often think, oh, they have a different Enneagram type than me, but they must be quite the same as me. No, they're complete alien. They're much more like aliens from outer space, people with different Enneagram types than your type, than that they're the same as you. But within the type, people are much more alike than different. So type 3 successful workers, women and men, are pretty much the same. And it is, even though you have, of course, evolutionary behavioral patterns that are more associated with masculinity or with femininity with women, but that's one of the good things that the Enneagram does. It will strip away such nonsense. And so if you have a female type 8 boss, she will be as aggressive as a male type 8 boss. Most often, culturally, she will the female type 8 boss will have a small layer of a little bit more refinement, but you only have to do something like, and then rah! So the difference between men and women within the Enneagram type are very, very small, and it is stupid to think that there is a essence in masculinity, as is here suggested. Batoon has a remark. Maybe if you make a remark and I don't react immediately, give me some time. I will catch up with you. Maybe people change their MBTI because it's static. Yes, that is an important reason. So if you're relaxed on day 1 and you do an MBTI test and then you are stressed on day 2, then it is highly likely that you score differently. And any personality typing that does not take into account this stress and relaxation dynamic will run into failures like this, including the big 5. Hopefully within a couple of months, a scientific research of a paper on our scientific research that I did shows that also big 5 tests are not are too static and do not work when you once you start to take into account stress and relaxation. MBTI using cognitive function is a static though. Each type has 4 main cognitive functions and 4 shadow cognitive. They all into times. Okay, well, nice to know, but so far I did not find cognitive functions to be making sense at all. So, but it's good to hear that they're dynamic. But maybe the MBTI should take that into account. There are pretty big difference between male and female brains. How can there be no difference in personality? Well, first of all, there is no such thing as personality. And there are, these are evolutionary behavioral patterns. Yes, there are differences in the male and female brain. I'm not sure whether they're that big. For instance, if you look at the limbic system, we have 2 limbic systems on the left and the right side. And what I learned is that women use one of those 2 and men use the other part. So either women left and men right, or the other way around. That explains a little of how men and women deal differently with emotions. But again, so yeah, are these big differences? I'm not sure whether these are big differences, but if you look at big structures, for instance, like the dopamine reward system within the brain, then there is the main structure is pretty much the same. So it really doesn't matter whether you're male or female if it comes to, for instance, big 5 testing. Good. Enneagram theory is that there's no difference between male and female within the type itself. So claiming that that certain types are masculine and other types are feminine is nonsense. Then we continue. Involving a strong drive for status. Well, that's correct. And self-distinction through achievement. Well, that is not correct at all. Sure, they want to build up an image of being successful. That's why they call the real name. I know they're all stupid names. Again, here also in this, they use all these. The helper is correct, the loyalist is correct, and that's for all the other names are the wrong names. So the reformer is not a reformer. It's the perfectionist. I already discussed why he's not trying to change morally. The achiever, that's what we now call it, is not into achieving. He is in building an image of achievement. So it's a successful worker. The individualist is not an individualist, but a romantic. The investigator is an analyst. The enthusiast is the hedonist of Epicurean. The challenger is not the challenger, but the boss. And the peacemaker is not making peace at all. He's a mediator. So much for the wrong names. And now we get into the real stupid shit. Well, there's obviously more type 2 females and type 2 males in the world. That's observable. You're wrong. That is just bad typing. I'm sure that if you start out with the thinking that there are more type 2 more females than type 2 males, that you find more type 2 females. But it just only shows you how bad testing is. So it's not observable at all. In fact, there are about the same number of for every type, about females and males. Thinking otherwise would be delusional. Well, I don't know why that would be delusional. Why would there be more? What reason would there be for there to be more type 2 helper females than males? I have never found any reason to do this, and it is not observable at all. I've literally tested thousands and thousands of people, never seen it. And in fact, we actually have a research which doesn't show male-female because we saw that it is not a relevant factor whatsoever. But the research is by almost 400 people. The same reason more females are interested by the nursing field than males. Okay, yeah. I'm not sure that I think that that might, I don't know. I don't know research about it. There might be more females interested in nursing field than males, but that has probably much more to do with learned behavior than with evolutionary behavioral patterns, because 100,000 years ago there were no nurses. And so you cannot have these kind of reasons with evolutionary behavioral patterns, because well, we did not have nursing. We didn't have nurses 100,000 years ago. So you constantly have to think, okay, our brain is formed within the evolutionary times, about 100,000 years ago. And sure, we now run this brain in a modern society. And that's why we act, and that's why we act sometimes strange in the eyes of others. But you have to really go back into 100,000 years and see the evolutionary pressures that has come up with these types of brains. That, or to put it differently, somehow these types of brains have survived evolution. So you might discover many hidden type 2 males if you look again. So to continue, although some females may test as threes, the majority are males. Yeah, that's complete nonsense. This is just nonsense. It's very bad typing. On the Myers-Briggs, roughly 2/3 of male test as thinkers. Well, another good reason why Myers-Briggs is complete bullshit. It's just too stereotypical. It's just biased. if you think, well, males are rational thinking creatures, females are irrational emotional creatures, that's just stupid. So by association, we expect to see more thinkers identifying as frees. Well, thinkers can identify with anything because MBTI doesn't have any correlation with anything whatsoever. Frees also tend to be extroverted, correct, which research has linked with achievement striving, correct, because extraversion has to do with sensitivity for material rewards, and you get more material rewards if you have the image of being successful. Moreover, one could make the case that extroverts, like frees, are more image conscious, yeah, indeed, and concerned with securing approval from others. No, that is wrong. They are not concerned with securing approval from others. In fact, what they do want is the love of others. They build up their brain. There are basically the three different triads within the Enneagram: the doers, thinkers, and imago people, like the 2, the 3, and the 4. Those all three have three different strategies to survive. And the survival strategy for the imago group, for the 2, 3s, and 4s, is to get people to love you. So if everyone loves you, you're safe. And that is the reason why the 3s build up this image of being very successful, because they think that if you are very successful, people will love you. If they love you, then you're safe. So it has nothing to do with securing the approval from others. It has to do with securing the love of others, which is a big difference. Judging might contribute to achievement striving as well. Well, as soon as they say might, then we are talking probabilities, and that could very well be extremely low probability. So this is an empty sentence, doesn't say anything. But frees are also described as quite adaptable. No, in fact, the frees are quite rigid. We can see that here. So if you see that type 3 is basically the antisocial personality disorder, if they are too much into, if they are too sensitive for material rewards, and that is very close again to rigidity. So this is basically wrong Enneagram theory, which can be associated with perceiving. That could very well be, I don't know. Thus, the GP preference is unlikely to be a significant contributor. Well, I think it's always a contributor if you do MBTI. Or maybe he's admitting here that MBTI is nonsense and that is not significant at all. Finally, other factors such as birth order may play a role, as research indicates that firstborns tend to be more achievement-oriented than laterborns. Well, again, that has nothing to do with it whatsoever, because it are evolutionary behavioral patterns tied to brain structure, and your brain structure does not depend on the order that you are born. Of course, many of the learned behaviors during your lifetime might have to do with being firstborn or later born, but that has nothing to do with your personality or your evolutionary behavioral patterns. So 4, this is a bit weird, because then they are referring to another type, and then in that, they're referring to a different post, and if you look that post, then they're going to refer back to this post. So this is a circular thing. So I'm going to skip those, go to 6 correlations. Rizzo and Hudson, well, please see my... does this mean that men have more brains than women? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Do you mean that they have a bigger brain? That could well be the case. I don't know. That might be researched. I don't know. I simply don't know. But how you say it is? But a bigger brain does not automatically how you say translate to being smarter. In fact, you might need a bigger brain because your brain works less well than other people's brains. Rizzo and Hudson, again, Rizzo and Hudson there are how you say the 2 biggest sources of disinformation on the Enneagram. So anything that refers to Rizzo and Hudson, you should always immediately become very doubtful, and double check everything. If you want to know more about it, see my stream on Reason Hudson. They suggest that the 6 is an anxious type. Well, that's correct. And their behaviors and attitudes can be seen as attempts to quell their anxiety. Well, they don't quell their anxiety, because if you quell their anxiety, actually, in fact, that would raise their anxiety, because type 6 think that that their anxiety brings them safety. So they actually want to deal with their anxiety. But not quell it, because as soon as they stop feeling anxious, they think that they're at risk and then immediately get panic attacks. Empirical research, as well as ordinary observation, suggests that introverts tend to be more anxious and self-conscious than extroverts. Well, again, only if you look at it statically. So let's go back to the neurogram. So if you have type 6, then you can see that you have to remember antisocial personality order is the too much of extraversion. The schizoid personality order is too much detachment. So you can indeed see that the 6 is quite close to detachment, which is being insensitive to material rewards. Could be called introverted, although most people would think that introverted means something different. But it's only in the neutral state. The moment they start to stress, they move towards type 3. And then you see that they become highly sensitive to material rewards. This is also what you see with stressed loyalists, that suddenly status and money and sex becomes very important to them. And so again, these things are correct if you only look at it statically, but the moment you look at it dynamically, then this falls apart. Which is 6 are more likely to be introverted? Again, maybe, but not always. Being more practical and less introspective, philosophical than 4s or 5s? Well, you should not have named 5s here, because I can agree with 4s, even though being more practical and less introspective philosophy. But 5s is actually quite at the same point as 6s. So there's also the detachment is pretty much with 5s. So here he's basically mistyping 5s. The 6 is almost comprised mostly of sensing types. Well, it could be, I have no clue what sensing means. Then we move to type 7. 7s are marked by a presence for extraversion. No, actually they are not. That is basically completely wrong. As you can see, again, if you look at dynamically, they are quite, and you have to remember antisocial is the too much extraversion. You can see type 7s are quite far away from it. They do get a little bit more material sensitivity for material reward when stressed. Then they move to the opposite side. But in the neutral state and as a relaxed, when they are moved towards 5s, then they are quite insensitive material rewards. And often, of course, 7s can be found living with very few material stuff. They live in, they have a little income. They don't have expensive stuff like that. But what we see is, of course, 7s acting out in the popular version of extraversion, where they're very on stage and very in your face, trying to have fun. But that is just a misunderstanding of extraversion. But actually what 7s are doing is trying to get you to push beyond your own borders and create fun times for them. But that doesn't mean that at the same time they feel the extroverted feelings inside of them. What do you think about the counterphobic theory for type 6? I think it's nonsense. It's just a bad, a bad description of type 6. All 6 are counterphobic. So 6s see a lot of shit happening in their mind. They can make these disaster movies inside their mind, and then they say to themselves, okay, but if I become too fearful of it, then I'm never going to do anything. I'm not going to go out in the world again. So I'm going to conjure up this courage. I'm going to step over my fears, and I'm going to go out in the world. So that's the normal type 6 behavior. And of course, sometimes you get people who do that, do the fear stuff too much, and then you can the psychopathology, and then they actually get into psychosis. rather than fear, or they get into the amotivation, avolition, and anhedonia, limited feelings. So they don't get actually in the, it doesn't have to be, the phobia is very little related to it. It has to do with them seeing in their mind all kinds of disasters happening. Most of the type 6 feel fear afterwards, but still go out and do stuff, and that is often described as the counterphobic. But again, it is neither phobic nor counter. And sometimes, but that's the minority. Sometimes the fear becomes too much, and they are paralyzed by it. But that is the avolition, motivation, that part that you can see in the scheme, and the anhedonia and limited feelings part. But being paralyzed is not a phobic reaction. So it has very little, if at all, to do with phobias. But it does have to do with fear. But the counterphobic 6 is the real 6, and the phobic 6 is basically the psychopathology of the 6. Yes, so yeah, again, I understand that that's what they mean, but then they should not use the word phobic, because phobic is, of course, related to phobias, and the problem with phobias is that people will have fear attacks if they are suggested that they should do something that they're phobic for. But in the case where the fear becomes too much for the type 6, then they become paralyzed. So it's just a different, and you can of course think of being paralyzed as avoiding stuff, but in reality it's different. So the paralyzed 6 doesn't do that much, and it's not, and you don't notice it because they're just sitting at home doing nothing. Whereas a person who has a phobia, if someone has a phobia for spiders, and you say, "Here behind my back, there's a spider," then they go, "Ah!" Thus they start to act. So. Counterphobic type 6 coming off similar as type 8 from the outside. Well, the 6 and 8s can be lookalikes indeed, but there's nothing to do with the counterphobic part. Again, I don't think that the counterphobic is a good term at all. So when I'm using it, I'm not using it because I agree with it. I'm using it because you're using it. But the reason why 8s and 6 come across as the same has to do with the type 8, of course, being a very stubborn, and I say in Dutch we have this saying that he has a big slab of steel in front of his face, and he's just going, my truth is the real truth. Whereas the type 6 is a very skeptic person. So the type 6 wants to see it before he believes it. And then in some 6s, this skepticism, if it's quite strong, comes across as the stubbornness of the 8. And that's why they're sometimes mistaken for each other. But there's nothing to do with the counterphobic stuff. Let me check if I missed something. So let's go back to 6s or 7s. We're already with 7. Good, because we're also past 8. And I want to finish around 8. And so 7s are more extraversion. I've seen that it's nonsense. As well as by their use of extraverted intuition, extraverted sensing. Well, extraverted sensing is not right at all, because that is basically real sensing. Both of which are perceptive. Are they perceptive? I'm not sure. Explorative. Yes, they are explorative. That's correct. Novelty-oriented functions. They do like novelty. That's also correct. Let me go back to this scheme. So the type 7 here is represented by opening for reasoning, and they are really into thinking whatever has never been thought before. And you can see that it is a part of exploration. They really like to explore their own inner world. And they like to explore new opportunities to have fun or experience new stuff. So that's all correct. But it actually, is counter to being extroverted, because extroverted people like to take risks, and the explorative people, they don't like to take risks. So even though type 7 comes often across as someone who likes to behave in a risky way, you can actually see that he always checking for quite safe boundaries. So they like to go on to an adventure, but preferably an adventure where they know that if they make a lot of mistakes and mess up, that there's a hospital nearby or other services that's going to come and rescue them. Because you have to think, if you're an explorer in the time that we still had unexplored country in the world, and those big explorers who went to the North Pole or the South Pole, they had to be very risk averse. If you were quite risky, type 3 successful workers are very risky. If you would send me on an expedition to the South Pole, I would die. I would just not think about risk too much. So exploration is actually a risk-averse activity, even though they don't come across as that. Let's move to 8s. Like Fries, the Enneagram 8 is characterized by strong masculine essence. Again, we explained it. This is bullshit. There are as many 8 women as there are 8 men, and the 8 women are as aggressive as the 8 men. Suggesting that 8s are more like to be thinking types. Well, here you can see how stupid this kind of reasoning is, because if there's there are 2 types that have problems with intellectual stuff. And so to associate thinking with 8s is just stupid. So you have 2 types that are, how do you say, intellectually challenged. that are the 2s and the 8s. In fact, in cybernetic Big Five theory, that does not reflect in my model. They actually do say that that those areas are, well, I said, I'm not sure what the term is, but I think intellectually challenged is a nice way of saying it. I think that in cybernetic Big Five theory, they would basically be called dumb. They're not intellectuals, so I don't want to. It would be stupid to create them thinking, especially on the wrong idea that there are more male 8s than females. That is just stupid. Yes, Patoon, well, very well noticed. Are 8s also risk avoidant? Yes, indeed. They are a bit risk averse, not as much as 5s and 6, and even I think also less than 7s. But for instance, they like to drive very fast. So they go, oh, okay, let's drive. I have nothing to do with speed limits, so fuck speed limits. But then you'll see that they only do that when there's actually very little traffic. And they will speed up, but they will speed up only a little bit above the speed limit, but not go crazy, because they know that they can be arrested, and then, for instance, their car can be impounded. So 8s like to take risks, but again, they want to take risk within a safe environment. They know that they are impulsive. They know that they can, break a lot of porcelain, be a bull in the porcelain shop. So they know that they have to have a safety net. That if they go off if they go off the reservation, if they go off track, that there's a safety net that will catch them and make sure that they are not completely destroyed. Because otherwise, if you do too impulsiveness, that if you are too impulsive, then you risk of being arrested. And of course, many of the violent criminals that are arrested and are in jail have often a type 8 brain. Well, it's confirmed by Luciv. Good to hear. I hope that you, if you have a type 8 brain, then you're quite impulsive. But I do hope that you have enough control of your impulses to stay out of jail. I tend to disagree with Riso and Hudson. Yay! Always good to disagree with Riso and Hudson. Association with 8 with NE. Well, I don't know what NE is. In my view, it seems more appropriate to link the 8 with extroverted thinking. Well, that's just stupid. Well, we all discussed it with so 8s again. Here we have the model. So antisocial personality order is too much extraversion, and we saw that thinking is not the strong suit of 8s. And you can see 8s are quite far away from extraversion. In times of stress, they move to 5s, and 5s is detached. So In both cases, they care very little about material rewards. Only when they relax and move towards type 2, then they become quite reward orientated. But that's an exception. So again, that's a good thing that we have Luciv, so maybe he can confirm it. I should not do this. It's not about the impulsiveness. I'm very impulsive, but always thinking about the safety net at the same time. Yes, that's exactly what 8s do. Like there's a red line to not bypass. Exactly. Because if you do bypass it, people get hurt. And of course, people do get hurt around 8s, but they get hurt in a way that is not repairable. But here's the thing with extraversion. So it's 8s, unless they are relaxed. If they're relaxed and they're helping others, then they like to be rewarded for it. But in their normal doing and in their stressed behaviors, they don't care how much it costs them materially. So if they are going to have a conflict, okay, good. So you want to fight? Oh, we're going to fight. We're going to fight. Oh, you're going to fire me? You're going to fire me? You think I care about my salary? Fuck off with your salary. So you can see in that behavior that they're most of the time they're not sensitive to material rewards at all. So they're neither thinking nor extroverted. It's just stupid, bad understanding of type 8 bosses. Hence, we might expect 8 to exhibit my 8 and G preference as well. I think it's stupid. And then finally, 9s. The 9 is slow to engage with the outside world. Well, I think that is bullshit. 9s are engaging indirectly, and so 8s are very direct, perfectionists. The other doers are very direct, and Enneagram type 9s, mediators, are very indirect. They want to massage people, pull the strings. Well, thank you for confirming that I'm working on my own business because I get fired wherever I go. Yes, that is an issue with bosses. That they, one of my students, a type 8 boss, he is a head of safety for very big infrastructure projects, and he just walked off a project because the guy in charge of the project who were just taking too much risk with safety and did not listen to him. And he just said, "Okay, fuck it, I'm gone here." I can't stand someone talking down to me and bossing me around. Yes, I'm always challenging the power dynamics. Yes, so the type 8 is called the type 8 boss, but as with all names, this name is misleading, but it's misleading on purpose so that it helps people understand their own type. Bosses have a big problem with authority structures. Unless they see someone as their guru, this is because they're not thinking types at all, unlike what is being said here. Is bosses do like to have a manual given them from higher up, where all the rules are, and then they can enforce those rules to other people. So they dislike authority figures. And they want to fight with, especially with the person who is direct in control of them, or their direct, leader or manager. But they like to have a figure far away, somewhere high, who can send down all the rules that they can then use to shepherd other people. Type 9s as being introverted, I don't think that at all. Again, this is also a lack of problem with the dynamic. So type 9s are here on the top of a dependent personality disorder. In times of stress, they move to type 6, and then they become very insensitive to material rewards. So then you could say that they are introverted. But in their normal state, they are, quite balanced between introversion and extroversion. And when they're relaxed, then they become quite extroverted. So again, if you look at it dynamically, it makes no sense what is being said here. Moreover, as peacemakers, this is also a way wrong. Mediators are not peacemakers. This is just completely the wrong description of the type 9. Can this be the 6 though? I'm not sure what can be the 6. 6 won't challenge. If you're challenging power dynamics, 6 will never do that. What 6 will do is try to make funny remarks about the power structure, but always within a safe, within safety, always in a way that will never risk them their job. So 6s don't mind being bossed around, and 6s do not get fired. So if you thought, could a 6 do all of that? No, 6 do not do any of that. So back to the type 9 mediator. Mediators are not peacemakers at all. Of course they do mediate, but they mediate against their better wishes. Mediators love harmony. They want everyone to hold hands, dance around the campfire, sing Kumbaya and stuff like that. That's what mediators want. And if they see people disturbing the peace, then what they really want to do, mediators, is grab people by their neck and bang their heads together and go bam, 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 and now stop messing around, quit it. But they understand that if they do that, then they disturb the peace themselves. And my cat is bothering me. So that's why they start to mediate. But it has nothing to do with making peace. It has to do with making harmony. And it is not their natural reaction. A natural reaction would be to actually bash heads together rather than mediate. There are to be P-types, I don't know, preferring to adapt and avoid conflict where possible. They do like to avoid conflict. I'm not sure whether they like to adapt. This type has been a more feminine essence. Again, makes no sense. It's completely stupid to think of 9s as feminine. Good. Well, I think we've gone through it all. And my cat is letting me know that it has been time to wrap it up. Any questions, remark, people disagree with me, let me know. But I think we can conclude that it is completely pointless to use MBTI in combination with the Enneagram. Well, it's completely useless to use MBTI whatsoever. By the way, she has a type 2 helper brain. She wants to have attention. She wants to have hugs. And if I'm not giving her attention, she's going to attack me very aggressively, like any type 2 helper does. So now you can only see her. I think you just confuse when they say masculine and feminine. It's not male and female, but feminine and masculine traits. Yeah, but that's, I can understand that there is a popular image associated with that, but that is that's just simply wrong. So I understand that is the popular opinion, but that is not the way reality works. The popular opinion is simply wrong, and so harmony, per example, being a feminine trait. Yes, that's the how popular. If you say if you would ask many people, do women prefer harmony or men? Then many people will say, okay, that is more women would prefer harmony than men. But what I'm trying to make clear is that is wrong. It's basically if you say, okay, can we actually count it and discover? Oh. I'm not giving attention to my type 2 helper cat, and she is going to mess about. And so what I'm trying to say is that, yes, this is how popular opinion would think about it. But if you look at it, how many men and how many women prefer harmony, then it will be quite equal. So it makes no sense to keep these traits as, or I would say, evolutionary behavioral patterns, because thinking in terms of traits is wrong. But it's much better to start thinking, okay, harmony is a evolutionary behavioral pattern that is liked by as many men and women, rather than see it as a feminine trait. Which is why 9 is correlated with femininity. Well, only in the popular opinion, and only in the imago of the 9. Even though I think it goes much more for 2s and 4s rather than 9s. But I think that the guy is actually saying that as you go back to freeze, you can see here, there's a clear, I understand your position about this is just a popular opinion, but this guy is saying, no, this is not popular opinion. This is actually to do with males and females. So even though I agree with you that you describe popular opinion correctly, popular opinion is wrong, but this guy is not even that. It is, he's equating it with males and females. And so I think you confuse when they say masculine and feminine is not male and female, but feminine and masculine traits. Yeah, that's if anyone is confused, then the guy, the AJ Drent, is confused because that's what he is doing. I'm only repeating what he is doing. And I disagree with him, but also disagree with the idea that harmony is a feminine trait, both as a trait and both as feminine. I'm not sure it's actually just popular opinion, okay, but then I want to have a further reason. I want to know more about it. Then I have too little data or too little reasoning to back this up. But I'm not sure because you're. But I'm taking it you are a guy with a type 8. I mean, even history, like millions of years ago, females were the harmony regulators in the tribe. Yeah, I doubt that. I strongly doubt it. I don't think that is historically accurate at all. But I'm not sure whether you're a guy. It's quite likely that you are a guy if you're a type 8 boss and you think like this. So the good thing would be to look for a type 8 woman and get together and just compare stories. And then you'll find out that she will be as aggressive as you. And so I don't think it's historically accurate that this is this fantasy that we have where when we were 100,000 years ago living in caves, that the men would go out to hunt and the women would stay home to collect berries and look after the children. But I think it's quite a lot of historical of archaeological findings that point out that females were as much hunters as males in those times. But I would look for a female type 8 boss and compare stories. You will be amazed. Good. Any other questions, remarks before we close? The next stream in English will be on Sunday, 7 p.m. Central European Standard Time. We will discuss NLP strategies. Paula, great seeing you again. And for those people who are going to watch tomorrow we will do in Dutch a stream on philosophy. We will discuss the works of life and work of Wittgenstein, very important philosopher of the 20th century. And on Saturday, between 7 and 8, we will do the final episode of the Dutch ABC NLP practitioner. We'll go look into anchoring. Going to test whether we can anchor you through Twitch. See you later, Platoon. Yes. Luzev, you're welcome. So, thank you very much. We're done for today. Bye, bye, bye. Hopefully see you tomorrow or Sunday. Oh, before I forget it, Sunday, 4 p.m. Central European Standard Time, 3 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, we have a panel on teaching excellence. Kate Benson, the International Director for Neurolinguistic Programming for Education, is together with 4 others we're going to discuss something called teaching excellence, all about how to use NLP in the teaching environment for raising and teaching kids. So that's in English. That is what I wanted to let you know. So Sunday we have an afternoon program and an evening program. Both are in English. That's it for me. Bye, bye, bye. See you next time.